All right. I remember saying this. And then I was reading. Of course, I go to what was downvoted, right? I wanna talk about this real quick. Okay, so here's something that I saw, and I don't know who Short Fuse is, but apparently Short Fuse is a member of a community who has dealt with stuff like this before. Okay. Look, I asked a question, and this is like an actual answer. Something I want to talk about on today's stream is the few concepts. One is a boogeyman. We're going to discuss what is a boogeyman. I want to discuss reality. What is reality? But this is crazy. I asked a question on Reddit from a person who seemed like they had done some actual research, and they gave an actual answer. Can you believe this? What the fuck? I'm probably going to be swearing on this stream. I hope nobody has a problem with it. I'm going to have to, because this gets my blood boiling. Okay. So look, what I was trying to say was... also, if we go elsewhere in the thread, someone asked a question, or someone said, like, oh, easy for Scar to say because he's got nothing at risk, right? Easy for him to be brave and say this stuff when he's not going to be held accountable. And what's going to happen is that people are going to get sued. Like, cops aren't going to come and end the event while it's happening. That's not the thing that's going to happen. What's going to happen is... these tournament organizers are going to break the rules, and then Nintendo is going to come out and sue them. There's going to be a lawsuit. A lawsuit. And the lawsuit is going to bankrupt them. Oh, yeah, I'll line up to be in handcuffs. But what I'm hearing on Reddit is that that's not going to happen. And it's not going to... I mean, I don't... yeah, I'm saying it because, yeah, it's not going to happen. No police are going to come and take CRTs out of the building. That's the most ridiculous thing I could actually think of. We're going to start fresh today. Maybe we'll do the exact same thing, but... Okay, so this one, I'm going to explain this one more time. This is from... I was watching the Obi-Wan. It's... you know. I'm not here to trash on Obi-Wan. But basically... reality exists. People look at reality and we draw conclusions and stuff. Something that is very normal to happen, especially from people who are not in leadership roles, is that people can freak out at what's going on. And when people freak out, their imaginations tend to take an active role in their interpretation of events. And when our imaginations take control like this, we're going to call this a boogeyman. We tend to invent a boogeyman, which is disconnected from reality and contains... it's rooted in reality, but our feelings have started to override reality. This is a boogeyman, and we're going to talk about a boogeyman. Okay. Now, because... and we're going to review this Reddit thread because Short Fuse has done so much more research than me, and I want to read everything that Short Fuse has said here because, you know, this person's educating us. But here's what I heard. All right, easy to be brave when you don't have any. If Nintendo wanted to cause legal troubles, it wouldn't be the players that they go after. Okay, and then people come to defend me. Thank you, everybody. It's not necessary, though, because... I'm curious what this person... Okay. He is not the one who would be bankrupted. Scar has nothing on the line. He is not the one who would be bankrupted by a lawsuit. Okay? So let's put this on the board. Here's the chain of events. Number one, there's a tournament. And look... I am not trying to slam on anybody. I'm not trying to say, hey, Carl, you're an idiot. Think before you post. I'm not trying to do any of that. I am just trying to communicate my perspective, and I also feel responsible for what I say here. if I were to say something that caused a TO or anyone else to do something that led them into trouble, legally, financially, or otherwise, I would not only would I feel, but I would be karmically involved, okay? And that would be a problem. That would not be good for me. So I don't want to be saying some bullshit, okay? I just want to get that clear. I'm not doing this because I want to battle with Carl the Well-Endowed. I appreciate Carl's engagement, and I want to take seriously what they're saying, and I want to examine why people are saying this and why it's normal for people to say these sorts of things, but also why I believe it's misguided and which takes feelings of fear and freaking outness over the reality as we understand it and as we witness it, okay? So, cease and desist or some other action, some other legal action. Number 3, we're going to call this protest. I did not say facts don't care about your feelings, bruh. Facts are real. Facts, I meant to say feelings are real. Feelings influence our behavior. Our behavior. Feelings are very important because our behavior is ultimately the thing that's most important. So when we act from a limited perspective that gives us X feelings, then we're going to behave in a way that may or may not be limited. But if we can understand the facts from another perspective or from multiple perspectives, that will create new feelings, which will influence our behavior. Our behavior is what matters, friends. Our behavior is what matters because our behavior changes the reality, and the reality is what facts and feelings stem from, okay? We need to stay grounded in reality. As a community, we need to stay grounded in reality. And this stream is about staying grounded in reality. And this stream is about how boogeyman ideas are not grounded in reality, and how we can learn to identify things that are grounded in reality and things that aren't, and then we can worry less about things that aren't real, and things that are real we could prioritize, okay? So, number 3, we're going to call this like protest / rally. My joke example was that the police are going to come. That's not going to happen. I didn't even mean it that it's going to happen legitimately, okay? But let's go to what this person's saying, okay? The event happens, okay? But then a lawsuit is going to happen. Lawsuit. And then number 5, this is the disaster scenario. Bankruptcy. Some community member is now broke and bankrupt and maybe in jail. All right. Let's see if that's really what this person is saying. Okay, Scar's got nothing on the line. He would not be bankrupted by a lawsuit. Nintendo has limited resources. They could choke out a crowdfunded defense. This is correct. This is correct. However, defense, okay? Defense. This is assuming the bankruptcy stems from an assumed defense. This is a defense. So basically, Nintendo's saying, hey, you guys played our video game and we don't like it. And then we hire a legal team to say, like, no, we didn't do that. Like, blah, blah, blah. My question, and this is a question, we're having a discussion right now, right? Like, I'm allowed to say things that are bad ideas. Let's just put that out there. I'm allowed to say things that are bad ideas. What we're going to do is we're going to continue this discussion. We're going to examine the ideas just like we're doing here on this stream to see what ideas actually make sense and what ideas don't make sense. But right now, what I'm trying to say is, first of all, I don't believe that a lawsuit is going to happen. We're going to watch Aiden's stream yesterday, and Aiden brings up the excellent point that Nintendo is often hiding behind the ambiguity of their language. In other words, they won't even say explicitly that Smash World Tour is canceled. So these are people, Nintendo, the company, Nintendo, believe it or not, doesn't want to hurt us and doesn't want to explicitly hit its customers in the face and punish and take to task its customers for wanting to play their video game. Believe it or not, if they explicitly did this, that would be really bad for a video game company. So first of all, Based on the reality that we've seen, this company that we're saying is going to lawsuit has not even wanted to say explicitly that they don't want Smash World Tour to happen. They said in Kotaku, like, oh, we didn't actually say that they can't host the tour. We didn't say that. It's actually fine, but we don't even know. They canceled it for some reason. That's one point of this whole thing. But the defense aspect, I am going to posit here that we just plead guilty. Yes, Your Honor. We did host a video game tournament. What are the damages? What are the damages? What are you suing me for? Like, how did we hurt you, Nintendo? How much money do we owe you now that we invited people to a place to play a video game? I want to understand what the consequences are. I want to understand what we actually even did. Now, on my other question about what are the actual damages, now we're going to go to our good friend, Short Fuse. Short Fuse says they are part of the dev team for a video game that has been really, really, really involved in this stuff. Okay? Let's just read this. I haven't read this whole thing. As part of the PM dev team, I've kind of researched this ad nauseum. Nintendo is pretty much enforcing on their ability to control the portrayal of their characters' IPs, which is the streaming angle. They can control how their IPs are shared/broadcasted. Same goes with Let's Plays and speedruns, which we know they can do stuff like that on YouTube, right? They could take down speedruns and Let's Plays, and even for having the music. Nintendo could shut down the broadcast if they wanted, but they can't stop a tournament from happening. Now, I'm just taking this on Short Fuse's research. I haven't done the research, but I also don't believe that random people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, well, you know, Nintendo can stop you from having a tournament, that they know what they're talking about. I would like to see a bit more from those people. So now I've got at least one person who I believe has done research more than I have and who cites Wikipedia articles with legal precedent. Somebody who researched for their own benefit. This is what they say. That they're questioning, this person's questioning whether or not legally this can happen. So this Boogeyman story, now we've got one question. We already have a question. I'm not saying we have the answer, and I'm not saying that. I'm just questioning whether this is grounded in reality or whether this is a Boogeyman story coming from people freaking out. Is this even legal? If this isn't legal, then the defense is not required and bankruptcy is not even a thing, right? If I can't get grabbed by Sheik, I can't get tech chased, and I don't lose. So now we're questioning whether or not we can even get grabbed. We don't know. And when I'm reading from Short Fuse, someone who has done this research because they've been in this situation, is that maybe legally Nintendo can't stop people from coming together with the consoles and discs that they bought and playing a video game together. There's a whole other question as to whether they would do that if they could. But there's now a question of whether they could. So we don't know if they could, first of all. And then second of all, based on the reality that we already perceive where they don't want to explicitly do anything negative, and they don't want to be seen attacking their customer base, whether or not they would. Vice SSB, I see what you just posted, and I want to see a bit more research. I saw someone else online say, it's technically public... I'm sorry that I'm using this voice, but it's public performance, and so I think they have the ability. Why don't you, if you really care about this issue, have this discussion with Short Fuse? Why don't people who are educated about these issues have this discussion? I am posing the questions, but what I don't want is our community to just be like, oh yeah, but you know what? Like, she can grab us, so maybe we shouldn't even play Melee. I mean, if she grabs you, then I don't want things to stop there. I don't want you to say, well, maybe this is a problem, and so therefore I want to stop thinking about it. Let's keep thinking about it, okay? even if you tell me that they could, now there's a whole other part of this stream that's going to be whether or not they would. And what I'm going to argue, Aiden makes this beautiful analogy of the big brother, the big sibling and the little sibling who are fighting, and one of them is saying, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. And I'm bothering my sibling, but I'm not touching them, and so they can't go to mom and say anything explicit because I am being like, I'm having this subterfuge, right? I'm not touching you. A lawsuit is touching us, okay? That's what I really want everyone to understand is the reality that we know of right now is that Nintendo wants to maintain the appearances of not touching us. It's customers. Because Nintendo doesn't want their brand image to be, we're a company who makes video games, but if we see you enjoying it together, then we will sue you. They don't want that. So there's a first question of whether they can. Of course, anyone can sue anyone for any reason at any time. I learned this in Legal 101. Anyone can sue anyone in the United States of America for any reason at any time. The question is whether or not you'll win. And whether or not a court will even hear the case. So there's a first question of whether they can, and then there's a second question of whether they would. And when we get to the question of whether they would, I believe that we can actually just like let go of that whole thing because they will not. They do not want to. People keep saying like TOs and legal fees. Well, do we even need a defense? That's my other I've got so many questions. Like this is a boogeyman. Y'all are saying number one, they do have like a really good case to bring against us. Number two, that we need to engage with it and that we need to hire the most expensive attorneys to like deal with it. And number three, that even if it's so much boogeyman because we haven't talked about the. Here's my question for a short fuse. We haven't even read what short fuse said. I need to stop reading the chat because I need to get through what I want to talk about. Do you have a guess where people are getting the idea that Nintendo can stop a tournament from happening or, quote, file a lawsuit after the event is over? Or, like, what lawsuit can be filed? My question here is, what are the damages? What are the damages? What are they suing for? What are the damages? What did we do to hurt them? Because to sue somebody and have a legitimate case, you need to be able to say, hey, this other party did something that hurt us in some way. So what did we do to hurt them? For a lawsuit, there has to be damages, in parentheses, torts. How is Nintendo being harmed? Generally, this means financially harmed. These are fucking good questions. Thank you, Short Fuse, for engaging in a... How does Nintendo either lose money or lose the ability to make money? What's their argument there? When, by the way, what I'm saying is we are just coming together, right? Because they C&D'd us from having an event that streamed, and what we did was we just came together to have a protest/rally, and in the background we had people who were playing video games. Okay? That's what's happening. That's the discussion that's the scenario we're discussing. With an IP, you are allowed to generate revenue from that IP. If a stream made money, you're harming Nintendo. Correct. Twitch knows this as well. This is a huge little gray area, okay, bro? There's a huge gray area that everybody's playing in, and no one's making a move. You understand reality? No one's making a move right now. That's the reality. We know for a fact that people aren't playing these cards. Nintendo does have live streams, and only they have the legal right to stream their IP and make money off their streams. Yes. Yes. Revenue could be direct like Twitch subscriptions or indirect like sponsored ads. That means they can sue after the fact. Okay, so basically, this is just the truth. Nintendo could sue like every streamer and YouTube and Twitch. If we're not talking streaming, then we talk about money being made. Tournaments generally fall under sweepstakes and contests in law. It's not a lottery because we remove chance by testing player skill, but the problem is most states tightly lock down on these events. They are essentially gambling. Having a flexible... Unless you've done your work and filed with the state's gaming commission, you can't harm associating their IP with illegal gambling. Wow, that's so funny. So basically, this person has done a bunch of research and is saying, like, every tournament we run, even if it's legal, most people promote the events with Nintendo IP, and since it's unlicensed, Nintendo does have the right to that money the tournament collected. Most tournaments are free entry because the competition behind it is promoted. You're allowed fair use of somebody else's copyrights with a limited set of rules. When you're making money, most of the rules are out. It's extremely rare to be able to make money off of somebody else's IP. That's true, technically. Players can license their own performance to the tournament / streamer. That's so funny. So this is like 4D chess. This is like legal chess where we can begin to license our performance, because that's actually what our community is about our performance of the game. Okay, so reading this, here's some of my takeaways. Number one, legally, the companies have so much power. They could sue us for anything, and they always have been able to. There's another question, which is, what are the damages? Now, the damages that I am seeing here is the prize pool and the entry. So maybe we owe Nintendo. If they come for a lawsuit, they'll have the damages inside the lawsuit, and it'll say that you owe us $1,000 or $2,000. That's how much money we stood to lose by you hosting this tournament, right? And then we can argue in defense. No, we could just say, all right, we're guilty. Here you go. Here's your $5,000. Anyway, these are good answers. And now this is something that I need to think about. I can't just spout some BS. Because these are some things that I believe a person has. This is a question that I had, a legitimate question that I feel has been answered. We have to think about what the damages are. And we need to understand, like, if Nintendo comes at us, do we need some big-time lawyer? All right, there you go. So the amount of money would be determined by the court based on several factors. This right of displaying the copyrighted work publicly is the same right which gives rise to suits involving individual bars illegally displaying sports. Right, they'd be claiming copyright infringement. Okay, so and then the reality changes. See, that's something that I do want to highlight with the whether or not they could, whether or not they should. The reality right now is that these suits are not being filed. And additionally, Nintendo can say honestly that they have not been suing their customers for playing their video game. That's the reality. As soon as they sue, then the reality changes. And what that means is that Nintendo finds themselves in a totally different situation. And they expose themselves to a lot of new risks. Then it becomes a business question. And I would love to know, if we really think about reality, what Nintendo's priorities are in terms of business priorities. How high up is Super Smash Bros. Melee in their business priorities? Does it make sense for them to change their brand image as a company to a company who will sue and attack their customers for coming together to play the video game? That's outrageous. I mean, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. I personally am talking about Melee very specifically because my perspective has just been like, I just think that the fact that they're not monetizing Melee right now is really material to our situation. If we were playing Ultimate, I would think differently about this whole situation. I would think that it is on their list of priorities. They still make money selling Ultimate. They're still making additional character packs. The company is still actively investing in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So my sense is that we are in a significantly less risky position as players who play Super Smash Bros. Melee. And personally, I'm not worried about Ultimate existing in the next 10 or 20 years. Like, I'm invested in Melee existing in 10 or 20 years. And I'm just trying to talk about how I think that it's very likely that Melee will continue to exist and that nobody's going to stop us from coming together to play video games. All right, so I just wanted to respond to that. I wanted to, I also want to say one more time that I don't feel personally like I have nothing on the line. I feel like anything that I say, if people listen to me, then I am responsible for their behavior. And it is in my interest to not hurt my fellow community members and chosen family, Smash Bros. Melee community. So if I say something and people in the community listen to me and they get hurt, then that is my fault. That's how I see it. Maybe for others, you know, you wouldn't feel responsible and you can just not worry about it. But yeah, I'm not providing legal or financial advice, but I do care about people's legal and financial situation. I don't want anybody to get hurt legally or financially, and I'm not capable of really helping with that. But what I am able to do is just talk about what I see as the reality. Okay. What else did I want to do? I wanted to listen to Aiden.
Your younger
this part. I want everybody to listen to this part.
They said they reached the same takeaway that LD did about basically Alan kind of strong-arming people with the implication that if you're not licensed and part of our circuit, your tournament isn't going to happen. Like, it's not going to have a future at all. And for these people to independently come to this conclusion is the strength of all these arguments. I think if I had to guess from like the Nintendo statement that's been released already, Alan or Panda as a company,
can you all hear
Nintendo
Aiden?
Are probably going to hide behind the ambiguity of the language that they have used.
He says they're going to hide behind the ambiguity of their language.
The way it's already, Alan or Panda as a company and Nintendo are probably going to hide behind the ambiguity of the language that they have used.
So what are they hiding? Hide behind the ambiguity of the language that they've used.
Basically, the way I described it was it's a giant version of that, like, you know that game you play with your younger sibling where I'm like, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Like, it's a giant version of that where they can stand behind a lot of the language they have intentionally chosen to use, and where none of these are like explicit threats, but over the course of such a long period of time, with like the words and that they have chosen to use and the actions they've chosen to take, and so many TOs coming to the same conclusion separately, we can agree that the the implied message here is certainly that if you do not get a license.
Aiden right now is talking about implications and hiding behind ambiguity of words. So he's basically saying that Nintendo and Panda don't want it to be obvious what they're saying. They don't want it to be obvious that they're threatening any action whatsoever. Any action whatsoever. They don't want, this is the reality, okay? The reality is that Sheiks ideally don't want it to be obvious when they're fishing for a grab. They want to catch you by surprise. Maybe that's not a good analogy, but they don't want it to be obvious that they're threatening in any sense. This action needs to be done explicitly. This action needs to be done explicitly, okay? There is no way for a lawsuit to be filed against a tournament, especially if we're doing a protest or a rally or a fundraiser or charity stream. There's no way to hide behind ambiguity if you sue us. If they cross the line, they can never undo that. They will have changed reality. The Boogeyman, here's the strength of the Boogeyman, my friends. The strength of the Boogeyman is that the Boogeyman can do any manner of unspeakable thing without ever changing the reality. The Boogeyman can hurt us in so many ways without ever having touched reality. But there's a major difference between our imaginations and ideas about what someone could do and them actually doing something. Taterbug, what I believe is that they will not try to grab and tech chase and kill their own customers. What I believe is that Nintendo, a company whose brand value is off the charts positive, will not ever unambiguously try to injure or hurt a group of their loyal customers playing their video game. I don't believe that they will do that, because if they do, they will have changed reality in a way where, and in 2013 they didn't, bro. I mean, don't even, they shot, yeah, this is intended to be life advice. Like, I want us to learn to stay rooted in reality, and this is a problem that's increasing in our world. If any of y'all have watched Bo Burnham, he talks all the time about derealization and people's minds being increasingly unable to connect with reality because we live in a crazy world. I just don't think it's going to happen. And if they do attempt to sue their customers, they can always back out of that too. I believe that it will be a devastatingly bad decision if they do choose to do that. I don't think that they really could. I think that even if they could, the mathematics would not work out. And I think I don't think that a business is capable of doing such a devastatingly bad, making such a devastatingly bad legal action against its own loyal customer base. And even if they shouldn't, and they somehow did, they will have changed reality in a fundamental way, and it will be on them to react to that new reality. And I just really don't see it happening. And if it needs to be me who, I am willing to sign some shit that says I'm the responsible one, right? If Genesis wants to take this approach, if Gimmer wanted to take this approach and he needed somebody to sign saying who's responsible for this stream and who's responsible for this organization, I'm down to sign that. It'll be the Reeds LLC. The Reeds LLC. And so maybe they can sue the mess out of the Reeds and the Reeds goes bankrupt. I don't know. Maybe that's how we do it. Maybe the Reeds LLC. I just so don't think it's going to happen, because I don't think Nintendo wants to hurt us, my friends. I think that Nintendo does want to live in a world where they have control over their business, yes. But I believe that if we have a statement that says that we are a group of individuals, we are not trying to profit off of Melee. We are not trying to build an industry off of Melee. We are not trying to hurt anyone. We are not trying to portray Nintendo characters in a negative light. We are a group of people who want to come together in community in order to connect around a video game that we love. And that if that is not okay with Nintendo, then we want to understand explicitly how we, a group of kind, peaceful, loving, loyal customers, are injuring Nintendo. Cubivores, I would argue that we're not trying to build an industry. We might be trying to build a self-sustaining community, but we're not attempting to build a growth industry. Blad Eagle asks, how is this still a problem after all this time? That's a great question. Nintendo made us. And we've never fully reckoned with them. But now's the time. We're not after profit. We want to play. We want to play video games. We want to get deep into the crevices of this video game.
You will not have a future, or you will be shut down, and you need to be a part of our circuit. And I want people to remember that whenever this Nintendo statement goes out, is that whenever it sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. Whenever it goes out, remember that I think they get to hide behind the fact that they didn't explicitly threaten or explicitly say a lot of these things. In some cases they did, which like Smash World Tour has highlighted a lot of the explicit statements, but a lot of the implied takeaways and statements that are shared across a giant pool of like community leaders are I think they're going to try and like backpedal on. Okay.
I want everyone to really think about how we're talking about reality now. We're talking about reality now. There's a lot of implications of threats. But when it comes to being explicit, they don't seem to be willing to do it. And if they get called on it, they seem to be backpedaling. That's the pattern in reality. In reality, let's stay rooted in reality. Remember, the boogeyman can jump right out of reality, and the boogeyman can do anything that it wants. And the boogeyman is born from us freaking out and causes us to freak out more. It's a cycle. It's a very beautiful term. Certain things are produced and productive. Freaking out produces the boogeyman, and the boogeyman is productive of more freaking out. It is very possible for a human mind to get stuck in such activity. But remember, that activity is the imagination taking over our perception and disconnecting us further from reality. Reality's all the way over here, my friends. The boogeyman is outside. It comes from reality and our perceptions, which are real. Those perceptions generate feelings, which are real. Those feelings can create these imagination loops, which are also real, but they're real in the locus of your mind, and they're not. See what I'm trying to say? They're real in your mind, but they don't represent the broader shared reality. They don't reflect it properly, right? It's like a mirror that is messed up. We're trying to clean this stream and this discussion. What I'm attempting to do is, well, of course, clear my own mirror, but also help us as a community clear our mirrors. Stephen Batchelor's Buddhism Without Beliefs. Yeah, definitely. This is where's my prayer beads? It's all one thing. One sec. Big Man Scar, what's the possibility Smash World Tour calls the lawsuit bluff, hosts the tournament anyway? Like I said yesterday, I called Gimmer and I asked him if he had already canceled the venue. I asked him if he had already canceled the hotel. Right? These are the things that I think, now we're going back to reality because, and I'm not giving financial advice, but this is a financial situation for Gimmer, right? All right, so I'm going to erase this because this is a boogeyman. This is what I'm trying to say. I think this is a boogeyman argument. This is my honest belief, is that there are many steps in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that leads to harm and bankruptcy that are departing from the facts on the ground about reality. That's my belief. I could be wrong. All right, let's talk about Smash World Tour specifically. The question is, what's already been invested? I mean, at least that, right? At least venue money, hotel money. That looks like hold money, but it's hotel money, travel money, at least. And the question that I had for Gimmer, is any of this salvageable? Or is this already down the drain? If it's already down the drain, then I personally believe that instead of telling everybody to stay home, I personally believe at this time that it makes more sense for Smash World Tour to host the event, to not stream the event, and to, instead of streaming the event, to stream a celebration of Melee. To speak about these sorts of topics, to speak about how Super Smash Bros. Melee is it's a community and not an esport, and how our dream is to be as inclusive as possible. Our dream is to be a safe place for people to come together and enjoy a game that is very deep, very interesting, very fun, and rewarding to progress in. A great place to make friends and to find people who will actually listen and care about you being there for yourself. I also think that, uploading the sets to YouTube would make a ton of sense. I think that if those videos get C&D'd, then they get taken down. That's what I believe. But that is a question for Gimmer and for the Smash World Tour team, based on the question of whether any of this money is salvageable. If they can get that money back, then that would be great. If they can't, then... And I don't think that anybody would expect them to be paying out $250,000 to the winner. And further, I don't personally know. Maybe a hot take. Maybe this is messed up. I don't know. But I do not believe that we ought to be, personally, as a community, trying to drive up prize pools for players who win. If we're able to generate $250,000, then instead of giving it to one person, I would love to spread that out to TOs and content creators and other sorts of things. That's my 2 cents. I don't know that. That's a whole other issue, though. But having spoken to Gimmer, it's not clear to me whether that money's salvageable, and I don't know what he's going to do. And I'm not saying that he should do this thing. I just see it as an option, and I don't understand why we wouldn't continue to hold the event, especially if so many people have spent a bunch of money to already go.
Because they're afraid of the consequences because they signed the NDA. The way I look at this is the most generous situation that I could interpret on both sides is that on one hand, Nintendo has manipulated Panda entirely to gain control over the scene, and or B, Panda acted out of significant self-interest and leveraged their relationship with Nintendo to do this, and Nintendo is the one that's less at fault.
I appreciate Aiden for separating out those two possibilities. Yesterday, I drew a diagram that essentially was Nintendo and the Melee community. If Nintendo orchestrated this, then that would be evidence that they want to be involved. And they are coming to us. And this, frankly, is the reality that we don't want. Seabass, please, said something important. I always viewed Nintendo like a neglectful father. If only they loved us. Seabass, please. Yesterday, I spoke at length about toxic relationships. This is more than Melee advice. This is very important, and this is a reason why a lot of people are traumatized as children. In a toxic relationship, as a mature adult, the correct response is to exit the relationship. If we are in an environment, let's make it less personal. If we're in an environment where, there's lava on the ground and it's going to burn us, we need to leave. We need to leave. The reason why we wouldn't leave is if we can't. As children, if we're in an abusive environment with parents, we can't leave. We're not powerful enough yet. So in an abusive relationship or in a toxic relationship, abusive or otherwise, which I think it's without a doubt, we are in a toxic relationship with Nintendo. The only sane response for us, if we hope to, live in our strength, is to exit that relationship. Now, there's two parts of a relationship, right? It can go either way. One is we don't go to them. Two is if they come to us, we do our best not to engage. And abusers will tend to have many hooks where they'll come to us and say one thing, and it will get us back in that relationship. They're hooks. So we need to learn the wisdom to avoid the hooks and also not go to them. It is very difficult to exit a toxic relationship. Very difficult. And Aiden just said, maybe Nintendo leveraged Panda and manipulated us to get their hooks into the community. Maybe. But also maybe Panda, let's hear it in Aiden's own words.
In this case. Or B, on both sides, the NDA. The way I look at this is the most generous situation that I could interpret on both sides is that on one hand, Nintendo has manipulated Panda entirely to gain control over the scene. And, or B, Panda acted out of significant self-interest and leveraged their relationship with Nintendo to do this. And
option A would mean that Nintendo is trying to control the community. Now, they have not been doing this. It's possible. It is possible. A lot of things are possible. So I see a lot of people in chat who are saying, and I don't know what Aiden's going to say, but I think he's definitely going to say B. A lot of people in chat, and me personally, I think option A makes no sense from the past reality and our past experience. Nintendo's not trying to control the Melee scene. They have not been doing that. They never have. So yeah, it's a possibility, but it doesn't seem likely. On the other hand, option B is that Panda and Alan leveraged a relationship with Nintendo out of significant self-interest.
And Nintendo is the one that's less at fault. Or B, Panda acted out of significant self-interest and leveraged their relationship with Nintendo to do this. And
yeah. So option B would suggest that this isn't happening, that neither are we going to Nintendo to like get back in this toxic relationship, nor is Nintendo attempting to get into a toxic relationship with us, but rather one misguided individual, Alan, use this toxic relationship in order to gain control. Panda's clearly a bad actor. In my view, there's also like something written about. Here, I want to pull this up because I think it's really Dr. Allen's comments from 2021. First of all, esports CEO. Okay, this is actually red flag number one. These are not community terms. This looks really great. I saw people who were coming in taking advantage of players. They were taking advantage of communities. They would use them and drop them. Wow, great. I spent 10 years becoming a doctor. I'm a doctor for the rest of my life. But esports is rising. If I don't give it full attention now, this opportunity will split through my fingers. I could do esports and then one day go back to being a doctor because I'm always a doctor, but I can never focus on being a doctor and then go back to esports. Interesting. If we started Panda Global 4 months later, it would not exist as it does today. The industry is too fast moving. All right, those sound effects were super weak, but I wanted it to be like, wah, wah. Red flags. Melee is not an industry. But point being, like, I read that and I felt that there were significant red flags based on the way in which Alan spoke of his intentions in getting in to esports. Ooh, and Cal WB brings up the opportunity slipping through my fingers. There is an egocentrism in So, all right, like, basically, if a person was to view Melee as a part of a system, a part of an economic system, and a part of an esports industry, then everything that Alan did makes perfect sense. You know why? Because in industry and not in community, the goal is to figure out what the environment's like and exploit exploit the environment, right? So he did what he was supposed to do by a capitalist standpoint. That said, Melee's not an industry. We're a community. We're not about this bullshit. We're not about this. So that's why I said yesterday, Alan, you don't need to be the guy in order to have value as a person. I'm sure that you were hurt as a kid. I think that you need therapy because you can realize that deep down you're a good person, you're lovable just how you are, and you don't need all this fucking nonsense in order to feel better about your life. You're good enough as you are. Just help doctoring and enjoy the game. I don't think you need more money, bro. That's not going to make you happy.
Nintendo is the one that's less at fault in this case. From everything that we know and everything that I know, I would be more incentivized to lean on option B, where Panda took like the ground that they had with this Nintendo sponsored circuit and you waved around a bigger stick, or pretended to wave around a bigger stick than they actually had. And Nintendo was in a spot where...
Which, by the way, we know from the Gimmer release, the SWT team release, that Nintendo was saying, like, hey, y'all are good. We don't even need a license. Yeah, everything's fine. And it was Alan behind the scenes who was the one saying that SWT is going to get shut down. Now, remember, mind you, companies are not connected. Companies are not connected. In general, in a company, the right hand does not know what the left is doing. The two different departments, even two different people on the same team, they don't know what's happening. So it's very possible that Gimmer was speaking to a group of people who didn't even know that Alan on the other side is speaking with people who know that at some point, any point, they can flip the switch, which will ultimately carry out this threat of C&Ding and disappearing tournaments.
They were like leveraged without their knowledge in certain situations, albeit ultimately chose to make the wrong decision, but were more used for a lot of this process than weren't. That would be my guess, but it could be either way. There are aspects of this that we don't know, and we have to like wait for Alan or like Panda to speak on. But that is like, from what all I know is like, I feel like those are the two most generous interpretations. So like one party being more fault than the other. What else did I want to bring up?
Also, at the end of the day, I do want to remind people, my spiritual practice has convinced me that deep within our experience, we all are the same, in that we're all humans, we're all animals, and we're all like just trying to survive and live in relative peace. Sometimes we do dumb things in order to get our needs met. And I believe that in the year 2022, many of us don't have our needs met. Particularly the need to feel belonging and to feel meaning and to feel importance. And so I don't want us to blame, personally, this is just how I hold all this. I don't want to blame Alan. I don't want to blame Nintendo. I don't want to blame anybody. I think people make bad decisions to get their needs met. And I would love to forgive those people, help them see the error of their ways, and invite them to just play or watch Super Smash Bros. Melee with us. It doesn't cost money, and it's fun. True, Nintendo isn't a person. You got me on that one. But anybody who is at Nintendo that people want to blame. And you can blame. You can totally blame. The issue is if you blame, then East Coast Guard tell them to burn. Hey, well, this is just my vibe, okay? You can go elsewhere for that. There's plenty of people saying to burn it. But I think that Melee can live on, and I think that needs to be our priority. Our priority is not burning people down or burning individuals down or burning companies down or anything like that. If we're already in debt and our financials have already been hurt, then we need to find a way to repair that. And we also need to find a way to move forward without causing it again and stepping into the trap again. This is a great question from Spencer27 Goldstein. How did big established esports orgs that signed Melee players factor into all this? I don't know. But as I just said, like, we need to, if we make a wrong move, we can't go back in time and change it. We pay our debts, and we find out how to not do it again. Also, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to believe anything that Alan says, for what it's worth. I don't hate him, but I don't think we should believe any words that he says, unless he says, yes, I was attempting to meet an unmet need of mine because I wanted to be seen as important and, you know, make everything work and be the hero. And I've realized that I've been wrong in life. And I think that we ought not engage with Nintendo as best as possible. I feel that if Nintendo comes to us with any words, we ought to do our best to not listen. We ought to drag our feet as much as humanly possible, and our leadership and organization arms and wings ought to never go to Nintendo under any circumstance. The question is, will they come to us? That's the question. SwallowCon asked the question, what if they approach us? Well, we need to wait to see if that happens, and we need to see what they're asking for, and if we could do the bare minimum, then that's great. But my 2 cents is, if they cross the line, then what I believe is that we ought to respect their wishes in terms of not streaming tournaments, but we ought to gather together and play the game together, because as best we understand, that is not breaking any rules. That's not breaking any laws. Yeah, Alan betrayed us, but Alan wasn't one of us in the first place. And we need to be skeptical of people coming in. And it's unfortunate because, I mean, I feel like everyone who is on Panda is so dope. Minus Alan. I feel like Alan found all these awesome people who were doing great things and, like, signed them to Panda and provided some infrastructure that was genuinely helpful in order to create credibility. But it turns out that it was all part of, it turns out, or the best way I can understand it is that it's all part of one grand play in order to take over the scene and to be the king. And communities don't need kings. Yeah, I love what Lou just said. Let's focus on enjoying Melee. Here's what that was the perfect summary of everything that I'm saying. If we can focus on enjoying Melee and ignoring almost everything else, we will be the best off. And yes, 17 Sickles, it was very short-sighted. Because look, it didn't work out the way Alan wanted. He didn't take over. And guess what? The reality's changed. Reality has already changed. The community knows the name now, Dr. Allen. The community knows the name Panda now. The reality's already changed. So the position that Panda created in order to take over the community, it relied on the ambiguity of the wording. It relied on the community not understanding that Panda and Alan are not one of us, but rather an entity that's trying to leverage us. And now the reality's changed. There's no undoing it. It can't be undone. This may be one of the worst communities to try to take over. I agree. There ain't no money to be made here.
I think even in the second case is, even if Alan has the best of intentions and he truly thought this was the way forward for the community and this is the way for us to live in harmony with Nintendo and find success and build a great community sponsored circuit, he ultimately went about it.
Oh, this is a great question. By reality, do I mean precedent? Bro, does anybody want to hear any Buddhist stuff? Anybody ready to hear some Buddhist stuff? It's going to be tough to explain, but I can do my best. Press 2 if you don't want to hear any Buddhist stuff. All right, by reality, what do I mean? Okay. Everybody knows at this point that a lot of these meditation exercises ask you to do something. Focus on your breath. Pay attention to your breath. One thing you will notice One thing that they want you to notice, that we want you to notice, people who are talking about reality, one thing we want you to notice is that the breath never stops. I can draw an image of the breath. I could draw an image of the breath, but this image is static. This image is static. If you really examine this image only really exists in your mind. The reality of this image is that it's on a whiteboard and it's an expo marker and it's all moving right now and it's decaying and it's changing. Reality is always changing. Images and words don't change. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but images and words are somehow frozen. So those images and words, anything that's frozen and not moving is, from my understanding of what reality is not real. Reality is something that is always changing. Reality is also a process. Reality is a process where the infinite possibilities of every single moment of the future are collapsing. The infinite possibilities are collapsing and are forged into the never-changing past, into the past. And the present inherits every past fact, every past happening that was once a possibility. Those possibilities become forged into the indelible past. That's what I mean by reality. When I say that the reality has changed, Alan at one point had a possibility space that was infinite. He could be anything. Anything could happen. But time passed, and actions were forged into, like, reality. And so when I say reality and that the reality has changed, there was a reality where the community did not know in their body and mind and heart and self, in their being, that Alan's like stealing shit. But now we know, and it's in us now. This is something else that I think is important about reality that I've realized. I'm sure that you all have the experience of sometimes you learn something and you can never unlearn it. Sometimes you'll hear a fact and you hear something changes and it can never go back the way it was. You can never unknow it. That's reality changing. That's reality changing. It's not something that you know in your mind. It's that your whole body changes. People call it the curse of knowledge, but what I would like to refer to it as, for sake of simplicity, is the reality changing. There is a reality. You are that reality. And when things happen, the reality changes and it just, you change, we change. And Dr. Battle is helping edit. Thank you so much, Doc. Also, I just need to say this, just to shoot a shot over the bow. I never once entertained the idea of not doctoring. What is doctoring? Isn't doctoring used as a verb? Yeah, they kill Bill. What is, does anyone say doctoring? I am just so confused about what kind of doctoring